The vote count is underway in Guinea following the country's second free election since its independence from France. The challenges of combating harmful cultural practices. And is the millennial love for the selfie just a show of self-expression or a cause for concern? Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. We begin in Guinea, where vote counting has been ongoing in the capital Conakry following a peaceful election Sunday. It was the West African country's second free election since its independence from France nearly 60 years ago. Incumbent President Alpha Conde's main opponents, Cellou Dalein Diallo and Sidia Touré, had sought a postponement of the vote, citing irregularities, but they went ahead and cast their votes on Sunday. The 77-year-old Conde is widely expected to win a second mandate, although the results were expected to be close enough to require a second round, probably against main rival Cellou Dalein Diallo. The streets were calm in the capital Conakry and elsewhere after clashes this week between security forces and supporters of rival parties that left several people dead and dozens injured. Well, now for the latest on the Guinean elections, VOA's Chris Stein joins me live via phone from Conakry. Chris, what is the latest on the vote counting there?
Well, so far we haven't seen any results yet. Those are expected on Wednesday or Thursday, or maybe even later on. What we have had is a press conference by all 7 of the opposition candidates for president, saying that essentially the vote was illegitimate. There was ballot box stuffing, there was intimidation, and there was other irregularities. They're calling for an annulment.
Now, the opposition earlier had wanted this election to be postponed. It wasn't postponed. Were people surprised that it actually went on well, smoothly, peacefully?
I don't necessarily think that was a surprise. The main opposition leader, Cellou Dalein Diallo, spoke to me the night before the vote. He said that there would be no point in boycotting the vote, but that he simply thought that it just wasn't going to be legitimate. So it seemed clear that the opposition had little interest in disrupting the voting itself, but rather wanted to try to attempt to make their case before and after the election, as they are doing and have done.
A number of the Guineans I've spoken to say that their concern was if Mr. Conde wins this outrightly, there could be problems. They wanted to see a kind of a runoff. Are there tensions in relation to that particular result, if that is the case?
Well, I unfortunately think that it's almost inevitable that there will be further demonstrations in Conakry and perhaps in other towns and cities in the country. There were some on both Friday and Thursday in Conakry that I witnessed, and it sounds that with the opposition rejecting this vote, it's almost inevitable that there will be, regardless of whether or not there is a second round or not.
In a very few seconds, what really were the issues here on both sides? How did they sell themselves as candidates?
Well, Mr. Conde had his years of governance as president. He had a number of construction projects, including a new dam that had been, built with, I believe, by the Chinese, and had provided, nearly 24-hour electricity to the capital, Conakry. Mr. Diallo had his experience as a former prime minister, and with I believe he also worked at the central bank. But unfortunately, I will point out that much of the politicking in Guinea revolves around ethnicity, and many people believe that was how the vote was decided.
Well, all right, Chris, thank you very much. VOA's Chris Stein reporting live via phone from Conakry in Guinea. Now, for more perspectives on the Guinean elections, I'm joined by Dr. Sona Konate. She's an analyst and vice president at the Seal of Hope. Dr. Konate, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
Now, first, tell me, what is your take on the election process Sunday?
Well, so far, the news are good. I'm so proud of the Guinean people, the Guinean citizen. They all went peacefully and to cast their vote. And so Guinea have come from so far away. Now Guinean people want clarity, they want democracy,
Yes.
and they just now they are willing to participate in every process.
Yeah, and actually talk about willing to participate. What is your sense of how the opposition particularly managed to persuade the people to participate in the process after initially having tried to ask them to stay off?
Well, people were ready to go and cast their vote. And so the election was a little bit hesitant in order if to tell people to stay home or to go. And I think people wanted to go. This is an opportunity for people to participate, to the election
because after all,
of our
this
officials.
is second time of a free election since what? 60 years ago. How significant is this?
Yes,
How significant
very,
is this?
very significant for us, for the Guinean people. We have the opportunity now to have a direct say through the ballot on the election of our officials. So I think people were very eager to be there, to be part of history, and they did.
Talk about having a direct say.
Yes.
Some also get concerned that the focus was not so much about how they can contribute to the development of the nation or the issues that are really pertinent to their livelihoods, but it's more about the ethnicity factor, that they wanted one of their own there. Was that kind of a concern to you?
Well, fundamentally, Guinean people are a very united country. All these ethnical issues started when elections started, so I think politicians, they have their own agenda, and so I think they use a little bit, that
they kind of create that,
to create that, to create some tension. But overall, I have the feeling that Guinean people are maturing. They are mature enough, and they know that beyond all those political issues, we are still a family.
Yes.
We are all tied up in a way.
And are affected by certain issues. What are some of the things you think you want to see the next government, whether it is that of Mr. Condé or the opposition, do? What do you want them to really tackle?
What I want them to tackle is the real issue the common Guinean face. They ask for the basic human right to have access to life, to justice, to education, to health care, and and to be able to express themselves. Now with the social media, they need to know that they will be held accountable for all their action. People are observing them, watching them every single day, so they definitely better stand behind their agenda.
Yes.
People will not buy smoke anymore. People know what they are doing, and we have definitely parameters to measure it every single day. So I tell our politicians to be careful, to respect our people. We put you there on your seat.
So
we
you
make you what you
out.
are. So please take that in account and definitely listen to the Guinean voice, your people's voice.
That's critical. And are you concerned a little bit about the results? What can happen after the results are announced?
Well, I am a bit concerned, of course, because, candidates have their own, electorate, and I know people will try to protest anyways the results. Like in any kind of ballot, there will always be, controversy. But I really hope that Guinean people will be mature enough to go beyond the different adversities and just accept peacefully the results of the ballot.
Talking about hope, very few seconds. Tell me about your organization, Hope, Seal for Hope.
Oh, Seal of Hope. Seal of Hope is an NGO based in Maryland, and we are trying to act in the humanitarian sector. We are trying to bring like clean water in many underserved parts of Africa. We are trying to help new immigrants coming in the United States and have a better life, start off better. And also, I wanted to say that we have our first gala on October the 16th, just to
okay.
show people what we are doing. So
Okay,
please come and support us.
Thank you.
Our first gala,
Thank you.
Seal of Hope.
We'll call you back to come and tell us about
Please,
this.
thank you so much. Thank you so
Konate,
much
you're
for
passionate
having
about
us.
this.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You're most
I appreciate
welcome.
it.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Konate, Sona Konate is an analyst and vice president at Seal of Hope. Now, turning to the Middle East, death and bloodshed in Israel. A wave of violence between Israelis and Palestinians is into its second week, with neither side backing down. An Israeli airstrike on Gaza in response to a Palestinian rocket fire killed a pregnant Palestinian woman and her toddler daughter. Medics say they died when the building in which they were taking cover collapsed. Several others were hurt. Later Sunday, an Israeli Arab struck 4 people with his car before jumping out of the vehicle and stabbing them outside a kibbutz in northern Israel. Tensions over the East Jerusalem holy site that Muslims call the Al-Aqsa Mosque and Jews call the Temple Mount has been at the center of the surge in violence. Palestinians, already frustrated by continued Jewish settlements in lands they want for a future state, accuse Israelis of trying to restrict them from the site. Israel denies the charge and accuses Palestinian militants of inciting citizens to riot. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to do all he can to stop what he calls a wave of terror, but is reluctant to listen to hardliners who want even stronger action. He is afraid of losing support from key Western allies. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has appealed to his people to avoid violence and not play into the Israeli government's hands. But there appears to be very little he can do to control rock-throwing youths. Now, thousands of migrants continued to stream into Serbia from Macedonia on Monday, in spite of the worsening weather conditions in the area. A UN refugee agency official says more than 5,000 people are arriving in Preševo every day, most of them from Syria. Of the 4 million refugees who have fled the country, only 1,500 have come to the United States, although President Obama has decided to take 10,000 over the next year. Now, how have these Syrian refugees adapted to their new life in the U.S.? Grace Wang takes a look at one family that are settled in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
50-year-old Farhan was a Syrian merchant whose comfortable middle-class life was destroyed by the war. Now, he only smiles when he rolls a handcrafted cigarette.
Things were getting worse and worse in my country. I was thinking about going to any part of the world if any country would accept me.
With the help of UNHCR and Church World Service, Farhan, who did not want to use his last name, moved to Lancaster 4 months ago, beginning a new challenge.
For
now, there are a lot of things to keep in mind, like knowing the laws here, knowing the area, how to do business in the U.S. All these things are new for me.
Church World Service, which helped Farhan with resettlement, has 23 workers in its Lancaster office. It provides comprehensive help for refugees with relocation, employment, and immigration. As a resettlement case manager, Amir Al-Fayed must keep in close touch with refugee families.
We meet them at the airport, we welcome them to their house first night, make sure that they are doing okay, they don't have any medical needs, and they are comfortable in the place that they're going to be living in. Next day we will go and visit them and start working on helping them to get all the documents that they need, to get all the services that they might qualify for in the community.
Farhan's current job is cleaning machines in a factory from 4 p.m. to midnight. Though they're Muslims, Farhan's family does not think there's anything wrong with accepting help from a Christian organization.
Despite religion, we are humans. This is a humanitarian issue, and people help us as humans.
Refugees must apply for permanent residency, the so-called green card, after 1 year in the U.S. But Farhan hopes that one day, when the war is over, he can return to Syria. He also hopes more refugees can receive help. Lin Yang for Grace Wang, VOA News, Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Well, today is a public holiday in the United States, Columbus Day. The second Monday of October honors explorer Christopher Columbus and his discovery of the Americas. Now, the achievement is a source of pride for many, but for some, the holiday is marked by controversy. Adriana Zhang has more.
October the 12th is significant as the date explorer Christopher Columbus landed in what became known as the New World. But many within the Italian-American community also celebrate Columbus Day because Columbus was Italian. John Viola, president of the National Italian-American Foundation, said the significance of the holiday is varied.
It's an opportunity and a holiday that we are able to celebrate what we've contributed to this country, to celebrate our history, our ancestors. I think for the rest of the country, Columbus Day is a vehicle to celebrate this nation of immigrants.
Although some think Columbus was a great explorer, others are offended by his legacy. Joe Genetin Pilawa, history professor at George Mason University, says Columbus enslaved many of the natives he encountered. Hundreds of thousands more died of diseases introduced by the European visitors. VOA spoke to him via Skype.
Within 10 years of the initial landfall in 1492, so by 1502, we estimate that the Taino, the native people, the native people who lived in the Bahamas, that the population dropped from approximately 1 million to 500.
Robert Holden, deputy director of the National Congress of American Indians, says the history of Columbus is distorted.
It's always been questionable in terms of native peoples and tribal communities and how we look to what was written by non-native people for a non-native audience.
David Silverman, history professor at George Washington University, says the whole story should be told.
I don't think you need to focus on one aspect of his past in order to and to neglect the other. You bring them both together so that he becomes a three-dimensional figure.
Some say the name of the holiday should be officially changed to Indigenous Peoples Day, while others say Native Americans should find a different day to celebrate their heritage. Adriana Zhang, VOA News, Washington.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, the challenge to eliminate harmful cultural practices. Stay with us.
This is BizBeat.
Greek olive oil is considered among the best in the world, and the country is a top producer, but distribution is a problem. Yorgos Dimitriadis is the director of Veolia Farm in Crete.
We never learned how to compete in an international market, and now that other people have that already, they're not going to open up the door and say, welcome in.
Greece does not have large processing plants or storage facilities for olive oil, so it sells a lot of its oil to Italian producers who put on their own label, ship it abroad, and make more money. Chloe Dimitriadis manages the Veolia Farm.
There's a huge potential, especially in the agricultural sector, that people, especially young people, haven't tapped into.
Financial problems in Greece have left farmers demanding cash for their goods, which slows down business. And half of the olive growers in Greece are small-scale farmers with little commercial expertise. For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
Well, now a look at some traditions in some African ethnic groups that many consider outdated and harmful. Africa 54's Esther Giduyu is here to tell us more. Esther?
Vincent, as you know, many communities around the world are finding it difficult to eliminate harmful cultural practices such as female genital mutilation and early childhood marriages. Today, we take a look at the Maasai and Pokot communities of Kenya. Many African communities are holding on to traditions and cultural practices that are not only outdated but downright harmful. Collins Nakedi, an educator and youth mentor, recently attended an educational program in the United States. He is from the Pokot community of Kenya, a pastoralist group whose literacy levels are severely low.
My community is 4% literate. And so that means even my president can't communicate directly to my people because we are 96% illiterate.
Nakedi says the situation for Pokot girls is worse. They are not only denied a right to education, but are also forced to go through a cruel tradition of female genital mutilation.
When you talk about female genital mutilation, it's 100% practiced. When you talk about cattle wrestling, it's 100% practiced. So these things are true.
U.S. President Barack Obama recently weighed in on these harmful cultural practices.
The same is true with practices like genital mutilation. That just has to stop. You don't do violence to young girls.
Ben Olekoisaba is a social and community development expert at Clemson University in South Carolina. He comes from the Maasai community of Kenya, which also practices female genital mutilation, but is also opposed to the practice.
I disagree totally with female genital mutilation. It's inhuman. I mean, it's infringement of people's not only body rights, but their human rights.
Koisaba says he is a role model and has a 20-year-old daughter who will not go through the cruel procedure. But is there an end in sight for the conservative Maasai community to end the practice?
I know it will gradually go, but there's got to be homegrown solutions.
Female genital mutilation is not the only cruelty facing girls in most African communities. Marrying them off early to older men is also one of the reasons women lag behind economically. Some are even abducted and forced to marry.
You are forcing this little baby whose body has not developed adequately, and you're putting that body of that child in a situation that is going to put her whole life at risk.
President Obama agrees with Koisaba, and he also calls this a bad tradition.
Bride abduction, bad tradition. End it.
Nakedi's father has 6 wives and many children. He is the only one who went to school. So, is there hope that the few educated Pokots can influence positive change in their community?
The expectation is high, but also the journey in terms of learning, in terms of exposure has been great for me. And I believe that we are equal to the measure, that we can go back and change some of those practices.
In most African households, women are the backbone of their families. They are the first person to wake up and the last one to go to bed. But in many cultures, most women are denied their fundamental right to education, and their lives turn into many years of struggle. Now, both Olekoisaba and Nakedi, whose communities practice these traditions, agree that education for both men and women is key to eradicating these harmful traditional practices. Vincent?
Well, thank you, Esther, for that fabulous story. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Generation Selfie, the new narcissistic trend. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Here's what's trending. Playtime for 2-year-old Zishi Garcia is not the usual Legos. and Barbie dolls. She loves to do cheerleading stunts, being raised high in the air, balancing on her father's hands, and doing tricky leg lifts at the family's home in the Philippine province of Batangas. She's following in the footsteps of her parents, who were cheerleaders in their school days. Her father started training her before she turned 1. She's videos posted on the internet have gone viral with tens of thousands of views and hundreds of shares. She's becoming a local celebrity too and has performed in public events. Well, and finally, taking selfies, and now the self-portrait of the so-called millennial generation. According to U.S.-wide survey conducted in 2014 by the Pew Research Center, 55% of millennials, those aged around 18 to 33, are posted a selfie. But some say there are signs that the selfie phenomenon is going too far. The celebrity considered the trailblazer for the selfie phenomenon is reality star Kim Kardashian, whose more than 4 million Twitter followers are hungry for the photos she posts of herself. Now, some psychologists say they are worried that people who obsess about taking photographs of themselves have not been given enough encouragement from an early age to value themselves for more than just how they look or what other people think. And that is what is trending today. Well, Sunny Young is on assignment this week, but in sports on Sunday, my fellow Kenyans swept the 2015 Chicago Marathon for the second time in 3 years. Some 45,000 runners took off on the 26.2-mile Chicago Marathon course, and in no time, the elite runners, all Africans, broke away from the park. 29-year-old Dixon Chumba took the lead at the 23-mile mark, easily winning his first Chicago Marathon with at least a time of 2 hours, 9 minutes and 25 seconds. Fellow Kenyans Sami Kitwara and Sami Ndungu took second and third respectively. On the women's side, Kenyan Florence Kiplagat pulled away late in the race to win the women's competition. It was Kiplagat's first win in the Windy City. She is 28 and won the race in 2 hours, 23 minutes and 33 seconds. She finished second last year after a brief lay down at the finish of the grueling competition. She erupted in joy and celebration at her victory. And there she goes. Well, that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us in Washington. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute, where we teach you all about idioms in American English. Have you ever heard the American English idiom, once in a blue moon? It doesn't mean that the moon is blue. So let's listen to this American English conversation to find out how it is used.
Where did you say your brother lives? He lives all the way in Minnesota, so I never get to see him. I only get to see him once in a blue moon.
Once in a blue moon is a common way of saying that something does not happen often. But what is a blue moon? We typically see a full moon once a month. And seeing 2 full moons in the same month is rare. The second full moon in a particular month is called a blue moon. Once in a blue moon is an informal phrase. And that's English in a Minute.